Alrighty, welcome back everyone to another episode of RE Radar. Once again, I'm your host and realtor Nathan Matheson, and today I'm joined with a special guest, the terrific Anthony Tanagretta. Thank you for joining me.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Now, Anthony is the owner of S4 Inspections here in Seattle. And just jumping in, we'll just start off with kind of letting the audience get to know you a bit. And
Sure.
kind of when did you decide to get into the home inspecting business and how did that all come about?
I got into the home inspection business in 2021. So 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, actually because of COVID. I was a chef for 20 something years, moved to Seattle for a job 6 weeks before lockdown, and I was semi furloughed, put on modified assignment, if there's not a better explanation for it. My wife, Anna, who is a realtor as well, had gotten her license. I was kind of looking for something to do because I was partial salary with the restaurant, just keeping an eye on everything while we waited to reopen. And she opened my eyes to this because she was actually thinking about becoming a home inspector down in California before we moved up here.
Alrighty, so jumping in, transitioning here now, what are kind of some of the most critical issues that you look for during a home inspection?
When it comes to home inspection, you're really looking over the entire home for anything, and you can find the most serious of deficiencies in the oddest and most unlooked area. But we're mostly, the most important thing that I'm looking for are structural issues, whether it's the foundation, settlement in the walls, the roof, any issues with the roof or the structure of the roof. But if I had to pick one thing that is most critical when it comes to a home besides structural, it would be moisture. Moisture related issues in a home can really be damaging because it's not just on the surface. You can have a moisture issue in a wall that doesn't look that serious, but once you take that sheetrock off, there could be, decomposing wood in the framing that could be a serious issue. I did a home about a month ago up north and was doing the exterior, had engineered wood siding on it. And, it was a little bit soft. It was a little bit soft. A couple of spots were a little softer, around 3/4 of the home. And I got down, and before I start on the exterior, go inside, do the inside, do the crawl space last. Because, once you get out of a crawl space, you just really want to get in your truck, go home and cry, and take a shower. But once I saw what was going on outside, I wanted to get into the crawl space and see if any of the moisture was getting into the house, into the crawl space. And once I got down into the crawl space, there were rotting sill plates, which is the board that's sitting right on top of the foundation that the house is actually bolted into. There was some framing that was starting to rot out. There was some fungal growth. Here in Washington, I'm not allowed to use the word mold, so we use fungal growth. There's plenty of that. There was some hairy stuff growing down there in the crawl space. So though the house looked beautiful on the outside and the inside, that fresh coat of paint that was covering up that moisture damage, if I wasn't in the crawl space, we wouldn't have seen how serious it was.
The biggest issues typically always tend to be the things the hardest to see, the hardest to find.
Exactly. And that's why with moisture, we've got a bunch of cool tools. I think that might be, besides working with people every day, my favorite part of the job are the cool tools. Thermal imaging, which is really beneficial in finding moisture issues. Drones, crawl space rovers, the tools themselves it's come a long way since, even in the past 10 years for this industry.
Everything's always evolving. All right, so just jumping down now, kind of the critical issues, but now how do you differentiate between what a major issue could be versus something that's minor that really shouldn't be a big issue with the deals?
So minor issues, with my reports, I have 3 levels of deficiency, and they're color coded. Blues, which are FYI, DIY, handyman stuff that, basically equates to loving your home and simple maintenance stuff. orange, which is moderate, which are things that if they're not remediated can progressively get worse and get into the more major issues, and or something that's at the end of its life, say a roof structure or any system, your furnace, your water heater, your heat pump outside. And then majors are health, safety, and structural concerns. And they range from stuff as simple as no smoke detectors in a bedroom, which is an easy $20 fix to get a smoke detector in a bedroom, but they're vital in the safety and health of the occupants. And it goes as far as, a structural concern where your foundation has cracks and your house is listing 45 degrees to the left side. Now, with that being said about cracks, not all cracks are not major deficiencies, especially up here in the Pacific Northwest with the seismic activity. I can think of, off the top of my head, 3 homes in all of the inspections that I've done that have had no cracks in the foundation. I've done houses that were built at the turn of the century and in the early 1900s that have minor, small little cracks that are expected to happen. I've done new construction that have cracks in them, and that's more of a settlement, weather related, and or the bolts that hold in the bolts that are in the concrete for the sill plates, expansion and contraction, depending on when you pour the concrete for the foundation. It really comes down to those majors are really health, safety, and structural concerns that can, imminent threat to a person and or the structure.
I think that really touches on also the importance of going to an expert with this, because something that I've touched on before on this episode with someone who had general contractor background was, again, with the idea about how not all foundational cracks are detrimental or bad. It's just settling. So people who aren't familiar with this, they see a crack, they might panic when it might not be a huge issue. And that kind of transitions over here. Every industry has these misconceptions that people who aren't familiar with it think. What are kind of some of those misconceptions that you've seen now that you've been in the industry of home inspections?
Staying on the cracking, that also depends on the type of foundation, whether it's poured concrete or CMU cinder blocks and or post and pillar, which you see a lot of around here in the Seattle area, that are just 4x4s or 6x6s on a footing. I've had clients that have gotten really worried about step cracking in cinder blocks, which is the mortar in between the cinder blocks that are cracking, which is typical. That's something that can be repointed and fixed. But getting onto some of the other misconceptions, I've experienced this, and I hear a lot of this in the message boards that I'm on and the other people in the industry that I talk to. The misconception that Uncle Joe that did construction for a while is totally capable of doing a home inspection and knows everything that we do. That may be true. He may have been in construction. He may know a lot about construction, but he doesn't have the license. He doesn't have the ability to report on it. And it's not beneficial to you to not have that report, because that report on your side as a realtor is a bargaining chip. If you have it in writing and it's not just Uncle Joe saying, hey, this is off, or this is wrong, or this isn't how it's supposed to be. It really benefits the client to have that and be able to go back and say, we found something with the foundation. We want to bring this to somebody else to look at it more in depth. One of the other big misconceptions about home inspectors is that, we should know everything about everything on a home. And as a home inspector, I have to know the pie. Whereas a licensed electrician, a licensed plumber, they have to know a very specific slice of the pie. So as home inspectors, and this isn't true for all of them, we know what we're looking for. We know bad, we know good. And when we suggest or recommend further evaluation by a licensed professional in that area, it's for a reason. Especially in Washington State, we are really handcuffed with the way we can say things, and we are not allowed to give you our opinion on what's causing that. That is for a licensed professional in that specific area. So I can find a plumbing leak, or I can find a lot of moisture mean, I did one in a Federal Way a couple months ago that there was 4 inches of water in the crawl space underneath the vapor barrier. Now, I can visually see that the whole back of the property was sloped towards the house. I can call that out. I can call out the moisture in the crawl space. I'm not allowed to put two and two together. I'm not allowed to use my common sense in that sense. Mm-hmm. So when we recommend other people coming out to check things, I really think that that's an important thing. Another one that I think is really big in my profession is the suggestion of a sewer scope, all properties, whether new or old. I've heard some real horror stories out there on new construction. I've personally done sewer scopes on new construction where I found crush lines right outside the structure itself, where whether they were backfilling and ran it over with a loader or whatever happened to crush the pipe, but never lived in home before, brand new construction. It was just crushed. Couldn't get any farther than 15 feet in the line because it was run over. And at that point, your sewage is just going into your lawn. I've also found construction. I say Powerade a lot. I don't know if I'm not allowed to say the specifics, but Powerade bottles, sponges, and tiling tools. I find them in the sewer all the time. And now these sponges are about yay big that they're using to clean off the tile after they grout them. That can cause a major blockage in a 4-inch plumbing line. So I find it extremely important to get a sewer scope, no matter whether the house is 6 months old or 100 years old. You know, I have a lot of people that are like, oh, it's a brand new home, we don't need it. That's extremely frustrating. You want to know everything. You've spent the time and the money to get a inspection done on the home itself, even though it's only, brand new and never lived in before. Why not do it on the sewer as well to make sure that everything is up to par?
Mm-hmm. So transitioning right into our next question perfectly, I guess, does your home inspection strategy or what you do differ on a new construction versus an old home that could be 75 years old?
In some degree, yes. In some degrees, no. We're always looking for the same things. We're always looking for the same types of deficiencies, whether it's plumbing or construction. The only difference is when I have an older home, I do put a little clip in the beginning of the report saying that this home is over 50 years old. The construction standards at that point, when this house was built, are different than that of today. So there may be something in there that is, say, common thing is a basement staircase in an older home. The rise and run, we've all seen them in Seattle where they're like this, walking up and down. They're short steps.
Yep, exactly.
Now, when the home was built, there were no standards towards that. Nowadays, it's absolutely incorrect. But if there's nothing structurally wrong with them, I do still call them out as not up to current day standards. But with that little blurb at the beginning, there's nothing wrong with them. It's to be expected. Same thing with some of the older wiring, some of the older techniques, some of the older panels, electrical panels. If I walk in and there's an older electrical panel over 40 years old, I always call it out. And I believe that something like that should be inspected by a licensed electrician. And or knob and tube wiring, which is old, just 2-wire instead of 3-wire. There's no grounding in that. There could be nothing wrong with the whole system. It could be functioning properly, just has no ground. Now, when that house was built, there was nothing wrong with it. To today's standards, everything should be grounded, should have ground fault circuit interrupting outlets in certain areas. For when it was built and the way it was built and the way it visually is, it's okay, but it's not up to current standards. So it still gets called out, but it's with that little bit of a grain of salt saying that, hey, you should really have a licensed electrician come in to make sure that everything is up to snuff, because that older wiring is not meant to last, 70 years. The insulation in the wiring kind of breaks down. There's fire hazards with it. Same with some of the older panels. There are a handful of panels that should always be inspected by a licensed electrician, and if they're willing to write down that everything is A-okay, then it is. You always get it in writing.
Yep, you always got to get everything in writing. You got to have the evidence.
Yeah, there's some older Stablock or Zinsco panels that, to today's standards, they've been recalled. They're fire hazards, but there are electricians that will come out and say everything in it is okay. It is safe. It's just everything is ungrounded. Where in our times now, everything needs a 3-prong outlet with electronics. So is it really all okay if it's not a grounded system?
Yeah.
For the
Now,
age of the home, yes.
you can't expect a home from 50 plus years ago to be up to today's standards and codes because it wasn't the codes back then. It wasn't the standards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, you see that a lot, especially, there's a lot of homes that are, I've done as early as, I think 1901 is the earliest one that I've done. And, people will buy a home, know that this is going on, and they'll update one system at a time. They'll update the electrical, and then a couple of years down the line, they'll do the plumbing and, remove all the galvanized plumbing in there and replace it with newer PEX or copper that lasts a lot longer. I think those are the two biggest things from older homes to newer homes is the electrical system and the plumbing, because they just don't last as long as the newer stuff does. Stuff like galvanized plumbing that corrodes on the inside and just, it's kind of like your arteries and it just clogs up, and you don't know until it's too late.
Now, transitioning in, just wrapping up here with the final question and touching on what should a homeowner kind of be doing for preventative measures that they can just be keeping an eye on or just doing little things to make it so when their home, if they want to sell it, is going to be in a much better condition? What are some easy, maybe not easy, but just things people can be keeping an eye on and all that?
First off, the most important thing about a home is loving it. Loving your home. It's like yourself when it comes to health. Doing your yearly physical. Keeping up on maintenance. You're walking around your house, you see that some of the sealant around the windows is starting to wear through and cracking. That's a spot that moisture can get in and start to really ruin behind it and cause issues down the line. Deferred maintenance is a killer. Also, you see something, say something. If you see something, do something. If you notice that there's an issue, if you see, water starting to build up around your foundation on a rainy day, you see a leak in your gutter, don't wait. Waiting really, really just adds zeros to the end of the fix. So staying on top of it. Simple things besides just the gutter. Your downspouts, make sure your downspouts are away from the foundation and they're properly diverted. Your roof, keep an eye on your roof. Moss buildup is a moisture issue. As the moist grows, moss just, feeds on water. So it starts to suck up. And as it grows, it gets underneath the shingles. As it gets underneath the shingles, it gets into the vapor barrier in there and into the roofing. And it just keeps sucking water and causing more and more moisture in those areas. So keep it clean. Don't ever use a pressure washer, but keep it clean. They have a lot of solutions to kill this stuff. What else? Exposed wood on the exterior of your house. If paint starts flaking, repaint it, scrape it, paint it, all of these are mostly moisture related things that are pretty important. You want to keep the
Especially
moisture
here in
out
Seattle,
of your
moisture is a big thing up here with the wet seasons, and moisture is a killer for them because it can cause so much unseen damage.
So much unseen damage. The north side of your home, the north side of your roof is going to be the most susceptible area to the moss or the algae that's going to grow in your house. And, north side of your home on the siding is also another area that you just want to keep it clean. Maybe not pressure wash it, but take a deck brush or a hose and just hose that stuff off, because as it continues to grow, it can get underneath the siding and do the same thing that moss does to the roof. You just want to do everything you can to keep moisture away from your home. Another really simple thing, test your toilets, because they do get loose. If your toilet gets loose, tighten it. If it's not a bolt tightening thing, maybe your wax ring has worn out and it's time to replace that, which is a simple, easy fix. But I've seen a lot of homes that have loose toilets And then you get down into the crawl space, and underneath that area, all of the decking or the subfloor is starting to rot out because it's not a huge, big leak. It's a slow kind of trickle that gets through, and it just starts to deteriorate the wood. It's a dark area that doesn't get a lot of ventilation, so that moisture just sits there and it just kind of eats away at, whether it's plywood or OSB, it just kind of eats away at that. And sooner or later, it's not going to be there.
Yeah, those little leaks can almost be the most dangerous because you're not going to notice them as easily. Yet if it's constantly just leaking a little bit over time, it's going to cause some major damage potentially.
Yeah. Another two really simple ones, the sealant behind your sinks, where the countertop hits a wall or backsplash, that corner right there is really important, because when you're washing dishes or you're washing hands, the water never stays in the sink. It always splashes in the back and all around it. And those little cracks are where moisture can get in. Another spot that's dark with very little ventilation, where fungal growth can start to grow, and you never want that. Another simple way to take care of your home, if you have gas in your home, at the gas meter, the gas pipes that come off the gas meter, or the pipes on the gas meter, keep that painted, keep it clean, keep it unrusted. You never know. Rust is it deteriorating, and you don't want gas to leak out. I think another super important thing for homeowners to do is stick your head up in the attic every once in a while. Your attic is supposed to be unconditioned, so it's supposed to be either hot in the summer, cold in the winter, and you want to check and make sure it's that way. If it's not properly ventilated or your attic hatch is not properly sealed, you're going to have conditioned air from the home escaping into the attic, causing condensation. So you'll start to see little signs of condensation, so darkening in the decking, the roof decking, which can also lead to fungal growth. So you just poke your head up there every once in a while. If you have the courage, do your crawl space too.
It really just comes down to loving your home and taking care of it, just looking for little things. And when you see those little things, do something about it, because in the long run, that'll help save money from having those massive, big projects show up. Yeah,
exactly. And I think I want to get back just really quick to one of the misconceptions of what I do. We're not all in it just to make a dollar and to write something down on paper and to hand it over and be on our way. I love what I do. A lot of people that I know in this industry really love what they do. What we do affects 5 families, basically. My family, seller's family, buyer's family, and both agents, the agent on either side's family. So I take what I do very seriously, because I don't want to see anybody get hurt on either side. I want to report the facts, and I want everybody to come out on the other side smelling like roses.
Perfectly said. Now, wrapping up here, thank you so much for joining me today, Anthony. I think you've brought some amazing information, and I think the listeners and watchers will be appreciating your great info you've provided from the home inspector point of view, with not only just what they can do for maintenance, but also being aware of what you're actually doing. So thank you very much for that. All right. Well, thank you to the listeners. Thank you to the watchers. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Until next time.